What would you do if you had to choose between your life and your soul? Between taking one more breath or staying true to the very core of who you are? If you love historical stories that dig deep into the heart of human courage, drop a 1 in the comments. And if you want me to keep telling stories like this, drop a 2. But stay with me, because what I'm about to share is one of the most achingly beautiful and heartbreaking true stories in all of history, a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about courage, about faith, and about the terrible price of conviction. Paris, July 17th, 1794. A prison cart rattles through the crowded streets, baking under a merciless summer Sunday. Inside, there are 16 women. They wear simple white dresses, their hands bound tight behind their backs. They aren't royalty, even though royalty has been filling these carts for months. They aren't criminals, though in the eyes of the Revolutionary Tribunal, that's precisely what they've become. They are nuns, Carmelite nuns, and they are singing. In just a few hours, all 16 of them will be gone, their lives ended by the guillotine, that brutally efficient machine that has already claimed thousands in the name of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But before that blade falls, they will do something that has never been done in the entire history of the French Revolution, something so unexpected, so profoundly haunting, so deeply human that its echo would ripple through the centuries. They will turn their own execution into a hymn, and in doing so, they will forever alter the course of history. This is the true story of the 16 Carmelite nuns of Compiègne, a story of ordinary women who found within themselves an extraordinary courage, a story that forces us to ask what we would truly sacrifice for what we believe, and to wonder if any revolution is worth the blood it spills. But first, let me take you back to a quieter time. Before the blood and the terror, before the world itself seemed to lose its mind. We're in Compiègne, a small town about 50 miles north of Paris, nestled in forests where French kings once chased deer and wild boar. The year is 1789, and the air is thick with the scent of summer. Here, tucked away on a quiet street, is a Carmelite convent, its stone walls worn smooth by 2 centuries of whispered prayers. In just a few hours, all 16 of them will be gone, their lives ended by the guillotine, that brutally efficient machine that has already claimed thousands in the name of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But before that blade falls, they will do something that has never been done in the entire history of the French Revolution, something so unexpected, so profoundly haunting, so deeply human that its echo would ripple through the centuries. Sister Marie Antoinette was 58, a widow who had sought refuge in the convent after her husband's death, looking for a little peace to quiet an overwhelming grief. She was a practical woman, good with numbers, the one who managed the convent's humble finances, a woman who had known love and loss and all the ordinary sorrows that shape a human heart. Sister Constance Meunier was just 29, the youngest of them all, a farmer's daughter from Lorraine with calloused hands and a smile that came easily. She had joined at 23, not to escape the world, but as she once wrote to her brother, to do something that mattered with my life, to be a part of something larger than myself. Mother Teresa of St. Augustine, born Madeleine Claudine Lidwine, was 42 when she was chosen as their prioress. She came from a well-to-do Paris family. Her father was a postal administrator, and she could have had a comfortable life, married well, raised a family. Instead, at 22, she chose the enclosed, quiet life of a Carmelite. She was brilliant, well-read, fluent in Latin, and possessed a natural gift for leadership that made her the anchor for her entire community. And then there was Sister Julie Verilat, 32, who wasn't even a fully professed nun, but an extern, the one who bridged their quiet world with the one outside, buying supplies, running messages. She could have walked away at any moment. She had taken no permanent vows. These women weren't special, not in the way we usually think of the word. They were mothers and daughters, some young, some old, some educated, some simple. They rose at 5 each morning for prayer. They worked in gardens, coaxing vegetables from the earth for their table and flowers for the altar. They cooked simple meals, mended their worn habits, swept the stone floors, and cared for the poor women of the town who knocked on their door seeking help. Their days moved to a rhythm as ancient as the monastic tradition itself, prayer and work. Work and prayer, the great wheel of the church year turning through seasons of celebration and seasons of penance. Life was peaceful. It was predictable. It was small, in the very best sense of the word. Until the storm came. 1789, you know that date. The French Revolution explodes like a long-dormant volcano, spewing fire and ash. The storming of the Bastille, the Declaration of the Rights of Man, the feverish idealism of a people who truly believed they were building a new world on the foundations of reason and justice. At first, the nuns weren't worried. "We just pray," they told each other. "We don't harm anyone. We live quietly. Who would ever care about us?" But the revolution had bigger plans. You see, the revolutionaries didn't just want a new government. They wanted to remake everything, to build what they called a republic of virtue, scrubbed clean of the superstitions and corruptions of the old world. And in their eyes, nothing represented that old world more than the Catholic Church, with its immense wealth, its political influence, and its claim to an authority higher than the state. In 1790, the civil constitution of the clergy is passed. It puts the church under the thumb of the state, demanding that all clergy swear an oath of loyalty to the nation, placing it above their loyalty to Rome. Most refuse. The government's response is swift. They seize all church and convent property. Then, in 1792, they go even further, issuing a decree that dissolves all religious orders. Monks and nuns are commanded to abandon their communities, to become civilians again, to break the vows they had sworn to God. September 13th, 1792. It's a date they would never forget. Revolutionary soldiers hammer on the convent door. The officer in charge, a young man who seems almost ashamed of his duty, reads the order aloud, his voice bouncing off the stone walls of the courtyard where the sisters have gathered. Immediate dissolution. All nuns must be out within 24 hours. The building is now property of the state. Sister Constance, just 27 at the time, is trembling as she asks the prioress what they're supposed to do. Mother Teresa looks at the 20 frightened faces before her, sees the tears on cheeks, both weathered and young, and feels her own fear rising like a sickness in her throat. But she knows she has to be the strong one for them. "We will obey their law," she says, her voice a quiet anchor in the storm. "We will leave, but we will not abandon our calling. We will not surrender who we are." They are forced to take off their habits, the sacred garments that had marked them as brides of Christ, and put on the plain clothes of working women. They have to scatter across the town, finding shelter with sympathetic families, trying to live like ordinary citizens. But in secret, in the dark hours before the sun rose, in rooms with the shutters closed and the curtains drawn, they continued to meet, they continued to pray, they continued to live as nuns, even when the world screamed that they were nuns no more. Over the next few months, things got worse. So much worse. The revolution began to turn on itself, devouring its own. The moderate Girondins are overthrown by the radical Jacobins. King Louis XVI is executed in January of 1793, his head held aloft for the roaring crowd. Queen Marie Antoinette follows him that October, meeting her end with a quiet dignity, her last words a simple apology to the executioner for accidentally stepping on his foot, and then it began the Reign of Terror. That year, from September 1793 to July 1794, when France descended into a collective madness, the Committee of Public Safety, led by Maximilien Robespierre, seized absolute power. The Revolutionary Tribunal was set up to try enemies of the state, and the definition of an enemy grew wider and wider with each passing week. Aristocrats, of course. Priests who refused the oath, absolutely, but also shopkeepers accused of hoarding goods. Farmers who hid their grain. Anyone who dared to speak against the revolution. Anyone who didn't seem enthusiastic enough. Anyone... The guillotine, that strange machine Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotine had invented as a more humane way to end a life, became the symbol of the new age. It stood in the newly renamed Place de la Révolution, a public stage for the daily theater of revolutionary justice. Every single day, 20, 30 people would meet their end there. Crowds would gather to watch as if it were a street fair. Vendors sold snacks. Children played near the edges of the square. The executioner, a man named Charles-Henri Sanson, became a kind of grim celebrity. He would later write in his memoirs that he personally ended the lives of 2,918 people during the Terror, and that after the first 100, he just stopped seeing them as people at all. It was just a job to be done. Priests were hunted. Those who wouldn't swear the oath were either deported or put to the blade. Convents were burned down or turned into barracks and warehouses. Churches became temples of reason, where a new cult of the supreme being was meant to replace the worship of God. They even changed the calendar itself, starting over at year 1 with the birth of the Republic, renaming the months for seasons and harvests instead of Roman gods. Sunday was simply erased, replaced with a 10-day week. Christianity itself was to be wiped from existence, replaced by pure reason. One night, as they huddled in a cellar for their secret prayers, Sister Euphrasie Brard, 60 years old, her body growing frail but her mind as sharp as ever, spoke to her sisters. She told them they should offer themselves up as victims, that they should pray to become martyrs so that peace might return to Paris, so that all the violence might finally end. It was an old, deep theological idea, a substitutionary sacrifice, the belief that the innocent could offer their own suffering to atone for the guilty, that blood could pay for blood. It was a terrifying prayer to make. Some of the sisters were afraid. To pray for martyrdom wasn't to wish for death, not exactly, but to pray for the strength to face death rather than betray what you believe, to ask God to give you a test you weren't entirely sure you could pass. But in the end, they all agreed, all 21 of them. Kneeling there on the cold stone floor, they secretly renewed their vows and they offered themselves up. You know what they say, be careful what you pray for, because sometimes God says yes. June 1794. Revolutionary spies had been watching them for months. In a society gripped by paranoia, where everyone was encouraged to denounce their neighbors, where children were praised for reporting their own parents for counter-revolutionary thoughts, the secret meetings of the former nuns could not stay secret forever. Sister Marie Antoinette was 58, a widow who had sought refuge in the convent after her husband's death, looking for a little peace to quiet an overwhelming grief. She was a practical woman, good with numbers, the one who managed the convent's humble finances, a woman who had known love and loss and all the ordinary sorrows that shape a human heart. Behind those walls live 21 women who have chosen a life of prayer, of silence, of contemplation. But who were they, really? This is so important because they weren't born saints. They weren't mystics who floated during prayer or had visions of the heavens. They were just ordinary women who made the extraordinary choice to give their lives to something so much bigger than themselves. On the night of June 21st, the summer solstice, a knock came at the door where Sister Charlotte, 38, was staying with a widow who made lace. Sister Charlotte opened it. A squad of National Guardsmen stood in the dark, bayonets gleaming on their muskets. "Who are you?" the officer demanded. "I'm a gardener," Charlotte said, which was true in a way. She had tended the convent's gardens. "You're lying," the officer snapped. "You're a nun. We have a list." 16 were put in shackles, their hands bound behind their backs with coarse rope that bit into their skin. They weren't allowed to say goodbye. They weren't allowed to take anything with them. They were loaded onto carts, like sacks of grain. Sister Julie, the extern, the one who wasn't even a fully professed nun, who had taken no unbreakable vows, who could have so easily saved her own life just by saying, "I'm not one of them. I just work for them. Their choices are not my own," didn't say a word. She looked at Sister Constance, at Mother Teresa, at the faces of the women who had become her true family over the years, and she climbed right into the cart with them. Later, during their trial, the prosecutor would ask her why. "You weren't a nun," he'd say. "You could have been free." And she would answer with a devastating simplicity, "They are my sisters. Where they go, I go." It was a choice that would cost her absolutely everything. The journey to Paris took 3 days under the searing late June Sunday. They traveled in an open cart, exposed to the elements, given almost no food or water. The roads were a nightmare, rutted and rough, and every jolt sent a fresh wave of pain through their bound bodies. It was hot, brutally hot even for summer, and the little water they were given was never enough. They were chained together as if they might somehow escape, but where would they even run in a country where every village had its own revolutionary committee, its own network of spies, its own citizens desperate to prove their patriotism? Sister Constance, the 29-year-old, whispered to Mother Teresa during one brief stop, "Mother, I'm so scared." And Mother Teresa, her own wrists raw and bleeding from the ropes, her throat parched, her whole body aching, managed to touch Constance's hand with her own bound one and said, "I'm scared too, my child. But we are scared together." It was such a small comfort, but it was something. They were not alone. The Conciergerie. It was the most infamous prison in Paris, a medieval fortress on the island in the Seine that also holds Notre Dame. It was hot, brutally hot even for summer, and the little water they were given was never enough. They were chained together as if they might somehow escape, but where would they even run in a country where every village had its own revolutionary committee, its own network of spies, its own citizens desperate to prove their patriotism? Sister Constance, the 29-year-old, whispered to Mother Teresa during one brief stop, "Mother, I'm so scared. We have time to prepare. Let us use it well. Let us find it in our hearts to forgive those who are doing this to us. They don't understand what they are doing. They believe they are building a better world, and perhaps in some way they are, though not in the way they imagine. Let us forgive the neighbor who denounced us. He was only afraid. Let us forgive the judges. They believe they are serving justice. Let us forgive the executioner. He is only doing his job. Once a day, they were given stale bread and sometimes a thin soup that was mostly water. The water they had to drink was brown, scooped straight from the river, sane, dangerous to drink, but it was all they had. On the second day, Sister Marie Anne, 58, started to burn with a fever. She began to shiver violently, her body racked with some infection. There was no doctor, no medicine. Sister Therese, 36, who had a knack for healing with herbs back at the convent, just held her, using her own dress to try and keep her warm, trying to coax her to drink the water that might have been making her sicker. They were forbidden to pray together. The guards, hardened men who had seen so much death they couldn't be bothered by 16 more, made threats. If I hear one prayer, any singing, one of them snarled, you'll be punished. Once a day, they were given stale bread and sometimes a thin soup that was mostly water. The water they had to drink was brown, scooped straight from the river, sane, dangerous to drink, but it was all they had. On the second day, Sister Marie Anne, 58, started to burn with a fever. She began to shiver violently, her body racked with some infection. There was no doctor, no medicine. The sound from the Place de la Revolution, just 500 meters away, the dull thud of the blade, that terrible sound of heavy metal hitting the wooden block after its work was done, a thud, another soul gone. They couldn't help but count. 20, 30, sometimes 40 people a day. They knew the sound all too well, and they knew that soon they would know the feel. Sleep won't come for Sister Constance. She is the youngest, the one with a whole lifetime still stretching out before her, a future now impossibly out of reach, and because of that, she has the most to lose. In the deep, velvet darkness, she just stares at the ceiling, watching spiderwebs drift like tiny ghosts in the draft from the window, her thoughts wandering back to her family, her parents, still alive, still working the earth as farmers in Lorraine, her brother Pierre, who begged her not to enter the convent, who told her she was throwing her life away. She wonders if he'll ever hear how she died, and if he does, how the news will land in his heart. Will he just think she was a fool? Or will he just, maybe, understand that this was her choice? That even now, terrified and clinging desperately to the idea of living, she would not choose any other path. Mother, she whispers, the word, a fragile thing in the quiet, dark. Will it hurt? When it comes down, will it hurt? Mother Teresa hears, and she cannot bring herself to lie. I don't know, my child. They say it's fast. A second, maybe even less. A good executioner. It's just one stroke. And then we'll be free. Free from this place. Free from all this fear. Free from everything. But Constance, listen to me. Whatever's about to happen, we are in it together. You will not be alone. That matters. In the end, it's the only thing that matters. We are not alone. 3 weeks. 21 days spent waiting in a prison cell, where the constant, gnawing fear somehow becomes a chillingly familiar routine, and where the smallest acts of kindness between the sisters begin to shine with an immense, soul-sustaining light. Sister Marie Henriette shares her piece of bread with Sister Euphrasie, who can hardly find the strength to eat. It was an old, deep theological idea, a substitutionary sacrifice, the belief that the innocent could offer their own suffering to atone for the guilty, that blood could pay for blood. It was a terrifying prayer to make. Some of the sisters were afraid. To pray for martyrdom wasn't to wish for death, not exactly, but to pray for the strength to face death rather than betray what you believe, to ask God to give you a test you weren't entirely sure you could pass. But in the end, they all agreed. Still sisters. On the 16th of July, the final word comes. A guard pushes the door open, reading from a document, but refusing to meet any of their eyes. Trial tomorrow. Revolutionary tribunal. Prepare yourselves. And every single one of them knows exactly what that means. Sister Charlotte weaves stories from her own childhood, spinning a fragile shield of memory to protect the younger ones from the encroaching terror. Mother Teresa leads them in prayers of the mind, since spoken prayer has been forbidden, asking them to call up their favorite psalms, their most beloved hymns, and to sing them silently in their hearts. They hold each other up. They are even stripped of their sacred habits, even locked behind stone walls, even condemned to die. Still a community. The only real question left is when it will happen, and it usually happens the very same day as the trial. They have, at the very most, one more day of life. July 17th, in the pale light of early morning, The 16 nuns are brought before the revolutionary tribunal, held in what was once the Palace of Justice on the Ile de la Cité, just a short, grim walk from their prison. The room itself is grand, a cavern of high ceilings and tall windows, designed to impress upon the accused the awesome majesty of a king's justice. Now, it serves the justice of the revolution, which is a different, hungrier beast entirely. The judges sit on a raised platform, draped in tricolor sashes, the new symbols of their power. There is no jury of peers, only appointed judges who are graded on the number of convictions they can secure. The trial lasts for 30 minutes. 30 minutes to decide the fate of 16 lives. There are no lawyers for the defense. They were deemed unnecessary obstacles to justice. There are no witnesses for the defense. No one would dare risk their own neck by speaking up for accused counter-revolutionaries. There are only the prosecutors reading out the charges in voices that have grown weary and bored from the sheer repetition of condemnation. The chief prosecutor, a thin man with ink-stained fingers and the fanatical burning eyes of a true believer, reads the indictment. You are charged with religious fanaticism, with opposition to the Republic, with illegal assembly, with conspiracy against the government and the people of France. You have refused to abandon your superstitious beliefs. You have continued to gather in secret. You have rejected the authority of the nation. You represent everything the revolution seeks to destroy. How do you plead? Mother Teresa stands, her back impossibly straight despite the weight of exhaustion and fear. She speaks, her voice clear, so that every soul in that courtroom can hear her. We conspired nothing. We harmed no one. We only prayed. The prosecutor spits the word prayer like it's a curse. Prayer itself is conspiracy. You prayed for the old king, the tyrant whose head we justly removed. You prayed for the old church, that corrupt institution that kept the people in chains of ignorance. You prayed for the old world to return. No, Mother Teresa says, and now there is steel in her voice. We prayed for peace, for all people, for France. We even prayed for you. We prayed that the violence would end, that mercy would prevail, that people would remember how to be human. The prosecutor slams his hand down on the table. The Republic has no need of your prayers. The Republic has no room for your delusions. The judge strikes his gavel, the sharp crack echoing in the cavernous hall. Enough. The verdict is clear. Counter, revolutionary activity, religious fanaticism, illegal assembly. The sentence is death. All 16 defendants. Execution this afternoon. Let the people see what happens to those who cling to the superstitions of the past. In the courtroom, a few gasps escape from the spectators. Some look disappointed. They had hoped for more drama, for tears and desperate pleading. But the 16 women stand in a profound, unbroken silence. No one cries. No one begs. Sister Constance, the 29-year-old who can't stop shaking, grips Sister Charlotte's hand so hard their fingers turn white. Sister Euphrasie, the 60-year-old who can barely stand on her own, leans on Sister Marie Anne. They are holding each other up. They're given 2 hours. 2 final hours of life. It's a small mercy, if you can even call it that. Usually, the condemned are taken away within an hour of the sentence. 2 hours to say goodbye to this world, to prepare their souls, to find some kind of peace with death. They are taken back to their cell. Back in the cramped room that has been their entire world for 3 weeks, Mother Teresa gathers her sisters. They form a circle, as close as the small space will allow, and she speaks to them one last time as their superior. We have time to prepare. Let us use it well. Let us find it in our hearts to forgive those who are doing this to us. They don't understand what they are doing. They believe they are building a better world, and perhaps in some way they are, though not in the way they imagine. Let us forgive the neighbor who denounced us. He was only afraid. Let us forgive the judges. They believe they are serving justice. Let us forgive the executioner. He is only doing his job. And let us pray for each other, that we will have courage when the moment finally comes. One by one, in the ancient ritual of confession, they kneel before one another and confess their sins. There is no priests. Priests are hunted men now, so they become priests for each other. They confess the small sins, the kind that make us all human. I was impatient with you, sister. Forgive me. I judged you harshly in my heart. I was selfish with the bread. I doubted. I was afraid. And my fear made me unkind. And each time, the same gentle response comes back. You are forgiven, sister. I love you. Go in peace. Sister Marie Antoinette, 52, who has been a pillar of strength for everyone else, finally breaks. I'm so afraid, she sobs. I'm not as brave as everyone thinks. I don't want to die. I'm not ready. Mother Teresa, who is also afraid, who also doesn't want to die, who would give anything to see just one more sunrise, holds her and says, "None of us are brave, child. None of us are ready. But we love each other. We have each other. And that is enough. That has to be enough." They sing one last time in private, the Times Veni Creator Spiritus Asterisk, the ancient hymn that calls upon the Holy Spirit. Come, Creator Spirit, visit the minds of your people. Fill with heavenly grace the hearts which you have created. Their voices, weak from fear and hunger and 3 weeks of prison food, still manage to weave something beautiful together. The sound fills the small cell, pushing back the darkness just for a moment. Then the door opens. The guards stand waiting. It's time. The walk from the cell to the courtyard where the cart waits feels like walking underwater. Everything is slow, heavy, and surreal. The floor was damp stone, always cold, even in the middle of summer, because it was below ground. The ceiling was low, webbed with massive wooden beams hung with spiderwebs so thick they looked like curtains. The room reeked of human waste, of unwashed bodies, of pure, suffocating fear. Rats, fat and bold, scurried in the corners. There was only one small window high up on the wall and barred that let in a sliver of daylight. At night, they were plunged into total darkness. The world just keeps on going, completely indifferent to their fate. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the traditional hour of execution. The death cart waits, a simple wooden wagon. Their hands are bound behind their backs with rope, pulled tighter than before, so tight it cuts off all feeling. They are pushed onto the cart with more force than is needed. 16 women in simple white dresses, the same ones they were arrested in, now dirty and stained from 3 weeks in a cell. No one speaks. Fill with heavenly grace the hearts which you have created. Their voices, weak from fear and hunger and 3 weeks of prison food, still manage to weave something beautiful together. The sound fills the small cell, pushing back the darkness just for a moment. Then the door opens. The guards stand waiting. It's time. The walk from the cell to the courtyard where the cart waits feels like walking underwater. Everything is slow, heavy, and surreal. The route from the Conciergerie to the Place de la Revolution is just over 2 kilometers, a path that follows the right bank of the Seine before crossing to the square. It usually takes about 30 minutes, depending on the size of the crowd. Today, the streets are packed. Word has spread that 16 nuns are being taken to the guillotine. It's an unusual event, 16 at once. It's a spectacle. The Paris crowd is used to executions by now. They gather to watch as if it's entertainment, a form of theater. They eat roasted chestnuts they buy from street vendors. They drink wine. They place bets on whether the condemned will cry, or faint, or have to be dragged to the scaffold. They laugh and joke as the cart rumbles by, sometimes shouting insults or revolutionary slogans. Liberty or death! Down with superstition. Long live the Republic. But this afternoon is different. As the cart begins to roll, its wooden wheels rattling over the cobblestones, a single, weak voice rises from among the 16 women. Asterisk, Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, Vita Dulcedo, et Spes Nostra, Salve, asterisk, Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. It's Sister Constance, the 29-year-old, the youngest one, the one who couldn't sleep, the one who was shaking with fear just moments ago. But now she's singing. Her voice is thin, reedy, barely audible over the noise of the crowd and the rattle of the cart, but it's there. Then a second voice joins in, stronger. Sister Charlotte, 38, the one who told stories to keep the younger ones calm. Then a third, Sister Therese. Then a fourth, Sister Marie Anne, despite her fever. One by one, all 16 voices join together, weaving into the ancient harmonies they learned in the convent, the harmonies they've sung together for years. The crowd begins to notice. The laughter dies down. The jokes stop on their lips. People stop eating. They stop drinking. They turn to look. What is this? The nuns aren't crying. They aren't begging for their lives. They aren't cursing their fate or proclaiming their innocence or doing any of the things condemned prisoners usually do. They're singing hymns, singing in Latin, that dead language of the old church that the revolution is trying to erase. Their voices, weak and afraid but somehow powerful together, float over the crowd, and the crowd falls silent. Thousands of people, and you could hear a pin drop. They have never seen this before. They have never heard anything like this. 16 women in plain white dresses, their hands bound on their way to certain death, singing as if they were in a church, as if they were at prayer, as if death were just another doorway they were all walking through together. Sister Constance, the youngest, smiles. She actually smiles, her face transformed by something that looks like pure joy. Mother Teresa, 42, raises her bound hands as high as she can and makes the sign of the cross, blessing the crowd, blessing the city, blessing everyone. They sing the Times Miserere asterisk, Psalm 51, asterisk, miserere me, Deus, secundum magnum misericordiam tuum, asterisk, have mercy on me, O God, according to your great mercy. They sing times, Veni Creator asterisk, come, Creator Spirit. The voices don't shake now. There's no fear left in the singing, or if there is, it's been transformed into something else, something much harder to name. Trust, perhaps. Surrender. Acceptance. Faith. The cart continues its slow journey through the streets, down Rue Saint-Honoré, where shopkeepers are closing up for the evening, past the Tuileries Palace, now empty, the king who once lived there, long dead, and the singing continues. A woman in the crowd, Madame Dubac, a merchant's wife who came to watch the execution with her daughters because her husband insisted it was educational, later wrote about this moment in her memoir. I have seen hundreds of people taken to the guillotine, she wrote. I have seen aristocrats and priests, merchants and peasants, young and old. They cried, they begged, they cursed. Some went silent with fear, some had to be carried, some fought until the very end, but this time they sang. I had never seen anything like it. I will never see anything like it again. Many people around me wept. Not from pity, though there was pity, but from something else, something deeper, something we had lost in these years of blood and anger and fear. They were showing us something we had forgotten, that it's possible to face death with grace, that the spirit cannot be conquered by the blade. That love is stronger than terror. My daughters asked me why the ladies were singing. I had no answer. The cart passes a group of men, hard-bitten Jacobins who had been at every execution for months, who prided themselves on their revolutionary fervor, who cheered for every head that fell. One of them, a former butcher named Gerard, who now served on his neighborhood's Committee of Public Safety, shouts out, "Be quiet! You're going to die! Don't you understand? You're going to die!" Sister Marie Anne, 58 years old, the widow who entered the convent seeking peace in her grief, looks straight at him. Her eyes meet his. She doesn't look away. And in a voice that carries across the silence, she says, "We know. That is why we are singing." The man falls silent. He would later tell his wife that he felt ashamed, though he didn't fully understand why. "They're enemies of the Republic," he said. "We're right to execute them." But his wife noticed he never went to any more executions after that day. Finally, after 30 minutes that felt like both an eternity and no time at all, the cart arrives at the Place de la Révolution. The square is enormous, one of the largest in Paris, redesigned by the old kings to showcase their power. Now it showcases the power of the revolution. The guillotine stands in the center, raised on a platform so everyone can see. It's painted red, the color of revolution, the color of blood. It represents the values of the Enlightenment, rationality applied to the problem of execution, no more slow strangulation from a hanging, no more botched beheadings by axe, just physics and gravity, quick and certain. The crowd is enormous. Thousands of people have gathered, packing the square and the streets that lead into it. They've come to see the show. It represents the values of the Enlightenment, rationality applied to the problem of execution, no more slow strangulation from a hanging, no more botched beheadings by axe, just physics and gravity, quick and certain. The crowd is enormous. Thousands of people have gathered, packing the square and the streets that lead into it. They've come to see the show. Executions are public for a reason. They're meant to educate the people, to show what happens to enemies of the Republic, to inspire fear and compliance. But they've also become a dark form of entertainment in a city that has little enough of it these days. People bring their children. Street vendors sell food and drink. The atmosphere is usually like a fair, almost festive. But today, something is different. The crowd is quiet. They're not eating or drinking. They're not laughing or joking. They're just standing, watching, and listening to the singing that continues even as the cart pulls to a stop, even as the women are unloaded one by one, even as they stand together at the base of the scaffold. And there, on the scaffold, something happens that has never been seen in the history of the Terror or even in the history of the revolution itself. They're just standing, watching, and listening to the singing that continues even as the cart pulls to a stop, even as the women are unloaded one by one, even as they stand together at the base of the scaffold. And there, on the scaffold, something happens that has never been seen in the history of the Terror or even in the history of the revolution itself. This is real. In just a few moments, it will all be over. The fear is a living thing, a crushing weight that threatens to suffocate her. Mother Teresa moves close, placing her bound hands on Constance's shoulder as best she can. "Child," she whispers, "do you want to switch places? Let someone else go first? It's all right if you do." But Constance just shakes her head, her voice a fragile breath of air. "No, Mother, this is my task. I asked to be first. I can do this. I have to do this. And then she does something that makes the entire crowd gasp, a collective intake of breath. She kneels right there at the base of the scaffold before Mother Teresa. She follows the ancient ritual of their order, a ritual they had performed 1,000 times for the smallest of things, asking permission to do a chore or to go on an errand. And she says, in a voice that trembles but somehow carries, "Permission to die, Mother." Her entire body is shaking. At the top, the executioner and his assistants are waiting. They are professionals, you see, not cruel for the sake of cruelty, but ruthlessly efficient. They've done this thousands of times. They know their job. They guide her to the plank, the bascule. It's called a hinged board that tips forward, positioning the neck perfectly in the lunette, that half-moon opening that will hold her head in place. The crowd is utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Thousands of people, and not a single one makes a sound. Constance is positioned. The lunette closes around her neck. She can see the basket waiting below, can see the straw inside meant to soak up her life's blood. She closes her eyes. Then she opens them again. She has a few seconds, maybe 10. Just however long it takes for the executioner to release the blade. She opens her mouth and she sings. Asterisk. Laudate Dominum omnes gentes. Laudate eum omnes populi. Asterisk. Praise the Lord, all nations. Praise him, all peoples. Her voice is weak, trembling, filled with terror. But it is clear. Clear enough for everyone to hear. The executioner releases the blade. It falls with a sickening whoosh of air, 70 pounds of angled steel dropping 5 meters. It takes less than a second. The blade strikes. Asterisk, thump, asterisk. It's the sound of metal on wood, a sound everyone in that crowd knows by heart. The head falls into the basket. The body is pushed aside. The assistants work with a practiced, horrifying speed. They've timed this. The entire process, from positioning to removal, takes about 60 seconds. They are good at their job. Sister Constance is gone. The first voice is silenced. But only for a moment. Because Sister Charlotte, the next in line, the woman who told the best stories, who was 38 and had a gift for making anyone laugh, she steps up immediately. She climbs the steps. She kneels before Mother Teresa. "Permission to die, Mother. Go, my daughter," Teresa says, her voice finally breaking. Charlotte reaches the top of the scaffold. She's positioned. The lunette closes. And she sings, picking up the hymn exactly where Constance left off. Asterisk quoniam confirmata est super nos misericordia eius. Asterisk, for his mercy is confirmed upon us. The blade falls. Asterisk, thump. Asterisk, Sister Charlotte is dead. But the song continues. Sister Therese, 36, the one who cared for the sick, who held Sister Marie Anne's hand through her fever, she climbs the steps. And she sings, asterisk, et veritas Domini mane in aeternum, asterisk, and the truth of the Lord remains forever, asterisk, thump, asterisk, Sister Euphrasie, 60 years old, the eldest among them, the one who had prayed for martyrdom, who can now barely walk, who is helped up the steps by the executioner's own assistance because she's too weak to climb alone. She sings in a voice that quavers but does not break. Asterisk, laudate Dominum, asterisk, praise the Lord. Asterisk, thump. Asterisk. One by one, they climb. One by one, they sing. One by one, their voices are extinguished. Each woman kneels before Mother Teresa, asks her permission, receives her blessing. Each one climbs. Each one sings, continuing the hymn, passing the melody from one to the next, like a relay race where the baton is faith itself. The crowd just watches in a state of stunned silence. Many of them are crying now, weeping openly. But these aren't just tears of pity, though there's pity there, too. No, these are tears of something else, something much harder to name. Maybe it was awe or recognition. The recognition that they were witnessing something truly extraordinary, something that went beyond politics and religion and revolution, something that was fundamentally, profoundly human. These women were showing them what it means to face the end with grace, with dignity, with a love that defied the very thing that was destroying them. They were showing them that the human spirit cannot be broken by fear, that it cannot be conquered by a blade. They were showing them that there are some things worth dying for, and that maybe, just maybe, the ability to die well is its own kind of victory. Jean-Baptiste Legagneur, the journalist, is standing in the crowd with his notebook and pencil, but he isn't writing. He's crying. He would later write in his diary, and this entry would survive him. It would be found after his death and published. "I do not believe in God," he writes. "I am a man of reason, a child of the Enlightenment, a supporter of the revolution. I have seen the corruption of the old church, its wealth and power and hypocrisy. I believe we were right to tear that system down. But today, I saw something I cannot explain with reason. 16 women turned death into a thing of beauty. They transformed horror into grace. They sang their way into eternity. I am ashamed of what we have become, ashamed of the blood we have spilled, ashamed that we have dared to call this justice. We have sent thousands to their end, and we have called it necessary. We have tried to create a republic of virtue through terror, but these women showed more virtue in their final moments than we have shown in our entire revolution. I don't know what I believe anymore. 15 are gone now. 15 voices silenced. The scaffold is slick with their blood, despite the assistant's attempts to clear it between the grim proceedings. The basket is full of heads, their eyes open or closed, their expressions frozen in that final, terrible moment. The bodies are piled to the side, waiting to be loaded onto a cart and taken to a mass grave. Only one woman remains. Mother Teresa of St. Augustine, Madeleine Claudine Lidwan, 42 years old. The prioress, the leader, the one who had to be strong for everyone else. She has watched it all. She has watched each of her sisters, her spiritual daughters, climb those steps, has given each one permission to die, has blessed each one, has watched the blade fall 15 times. Constance, the girl who loved flowers, Charlotte, who made everyone laugh, Therese, the healer, Euphrasie, the wise elder, Marie Anne, Marie Henriette, Julie, all of them, all gone, their song silenced, their blood spilled. And now, it is her turn. There's no one left to ask permission from. She kneels alone on the blood-soaked platform. She closes her eyes. She prays silently. Asterisk, Lord, receive us. Receive us all. Let our deaths mean something. Let this blood be the last. Asterisk. Then she stands. She climbs the steps, slowly, deliberately. There's no trembling. Not anymore. She's beyond fear now, in that strange, quiet place of acceptance where fear holds no more power. The crowd watches her. Everyone watches her. This is the last one. After this, it's over. She reaches the top. The executioner is tired. 15 executions in an hour. His arms ache from raising and releasing the blade. But he has one more to do. He positions her. The lunette closes around her neck. And Mother Teresa, all alone now, the last voice, she sings. Asterisk, veni creator spiritus, mentes tuorum visita. Asterisk, come, creator spirit, visit the minds of your people. Her voice is clear, strong, not weak with fear, but filled with something else. Hope, maybe, faith. Asterisk, impel, superna, gratia, que tu cresti, pectora. Asterisk, fill with heavenly grace the hearts which you have created. The blade falls. Asterisk, thump. Asterisk, Mother Teresa is dead. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. 16 women, 16 voices. All silence now. The time is exactly 6 o'clock in the evening. The sun is still up. A summer sun that won't set for hours yet. The sky is still blue. Birds still sing. The world just continues. The crowd begins to drift away. Slowly, quietly. Usually, after one of these public spectacles, there's chatter, discussion, people trying to process what they've just seen. But not today. Today, people leave in silence, lost in their own thoughts. A guard, Antoine Vernet, 24 years old, a true believer in the revolution who joined the National Guard because he thought he was fighting for a better world, he stands at his post. He's been to dozens of these events. It's part of his duty. He's never questioned it before. The Republic must defend itself against its enemies. But that night, when he goes home to his small apartment, to his wife who is pregnant with their first child, he can't sleep. Every time he closes his eyes, he hears singing. He keeps thinking, asterisk, who did we just kill? What did they really do? Asterisk. They prayed. They gathered to pray. And for that, we took their heads. His wife wakes to find him crying in the dark. He would quit the National Guard 3 days later and become a teacher instead, and would spend the rest of his life trying to atone for what he witnessed. 10 days later, July 27th, 1794, or the 9th of Thermidor in the new revolutionary calendar. Something shifts. The tide turns. Robespierre, the incorruptible, the architect of the Terror, the man who sent thousands to the guillotine in the name of virtue, is himself overthrown. His own fellow revolutionaries turn on him, arrest him, declare him a tyrant. The very next day, he is taken to the same guillotine he had used so effectively. The blade that fell on so many others now falls on him. And with Robespierre's death, the terror ends. The killing slows, then it stops. The Revolutionary Tribunal is reformed, the prisons begin to empty. France begins the long, painful process of recovering from its madness. Is it a coincidence? Perhaps. The revolution was already devouring its own children. Robespierre would have likely fallen soon, regardless. But the timing, it's striking. 10 days. Just 10 days after 16 women sang their way to their deaths, the terror finally ends. French Catholics, when they hear the story, they say it's no coincidence at all. They say the blood of the 16 nuns was poured out as a sacrifice, that their prayers were answered, that Paris was given peace through their deaths. They point to the old theological idea of redemptive suffering, the belief that the innocent can suffer for the guilty, that sacrifice has real power, that blood can atone for blood. Historians, being more skeptical, say it's just timing, just chance, just the chaotic way history unfolded. The terror was going to end anyway. Robespierre's fall was inevitable. The 16 nuns had nothing to do with it. But there is something both groups agree on, something that is undeniable. The people who witnessed the deaths of those 16 nuns, thousands of them, were changed by what they saw. Not all of them, of course. Some remained fervent revolutionaries. Some continued to believe the terror was necessary, that the ends justified the means. But many, maybe even most, were shaken to their core. They had seen something that challenged all their certainties, that suggested maybe there were values higher than the Republic, maybe there were truths that transcended politics, maybe there was something in the human spirit that simply could not be conquered by force or by fear. Asterisk Sister Euphrasie, 60 years old, the eldest among them, the one who had prayed for martyrdom, who can now barely walk, who is helped up the steps by the executioner's own assistants because she's too weak to climb alone. She sings in a voice that quavers but does not break. Asterisk, laudate Dominum. Asterisk, praise the Lord. Asterisk, thump. Asterisk, one by one, they climb. One by one, they sing. One by one, their voices are extinguished. Each woman kneels before Mother Teresa, asks her permission, receives her blessing. Jean-Baptiste Le Gagneur, the journalist, he writes a series of articles criticizing the excesses of the terror, calling for moderation and mercy. He's briefly imprisoned for it, but he survives and later writes a book, Asterisk. Reflections on the Terror, Asterisk, that becomes hugely influential in shaping how the revolution is remembered. And Antoine Vernet, the guard, he becomes a teacher, as we mentioned, and he makes it his life's work to teach his students about the importance of individual conscience, of standing up for what's right even when it's dangerous, of remembering that every political system, no matter how idealistic, is still made up of human beings with human flaws. The ripples just keep spreading. 16 women died, but their deaths awakened something in thousands. Now, not all of those thousands changed their lives dramatically. Most didn't. They went back to their ordinary concerns, making a living, raising their kids, just getting through the day. But something had shifted inside them, some fundamental assumption about power and resistance, about what it means to be human, about the relationship between a person's conscience and the demands of the state. The 16 nuns had shown that it's possible to resist without violence, to maintain your dignity in the face of utter degradation, to choose death over compromise. They had shown that singing can be a form of resistance, that grace can be a form of defiance, and that love can triumph even in defeat. In 1795, just 1 year after the executions, the French government officially separates church and state, ending the persecution of Catholics. In 1801, Napoleon signs an agreement with the Pope, restoring official relations between France and Rome. The worst of the anti-religious violence is finally over. Then, in 1906, 112 years after their deaths, Pope Pius X beatifies the 16 Carmelite nuns of Compiègne. It's a formal recognition by the Catholic Church that these women died as martyrs, as witnesses to their faith. Their story has been preserved through the testimony of those who were there, through documents from the Revolutionary Tribunal, through letters some of the nuns wrote before their arrest. Their names are remembered: Teresa of St. Augustine, Euphrasie of the Immaculate Conception, Henriette of Jesus, and all the others. Each one a person, a life, a story. Then in 1949, the French composer Francis Poulenc, one of the great musical geniuses of the 20th century, creates an opera based on their story. Asterisk, Dialogues des Carmelites, becomes one of the masterworks of modern opera, performed all around the world. The final scene, where the nuns sing their way to the guillotine, their voices dropping out one by one as each is taken, is considered one of the most powerful and heart-wrenching moments in all of opera. This is real. In just a few moments, it will all be over. The fear is a living thing, a crushing weight that threatens to suffocate her. Mother Teresa moves close, placing her bound hands on Constance's shoulder as best she can. "Child," she whispers, "do you want to switch places? Let someone else go first? It's all right if you do." But Constance just shakes her head, her voice a fragile breath of air. "No, mother, this is my task. I asked to be first. I can do this. I have to do this." But he treats their story with reverence, with artistic seriousness, preserving it for all future generations. And in 2024, 230 years after the event, Pope Francis canonizes the 16 nuns as saints. It's a celebration attended by thousands in Rome, including descendants of some of the nuns' families, French government officials, and Catholics from all over the world. Madame de Bach, the merchant's wife who watched with her daughters, she gets involved in charitable work, caring for the orphans created by the Revolution children whose parents had been taken by the guillotine or lost in the wars. She would run a small orphanage until her death at age 63, and whenever people asked her why she did it, she would sometimes tell them about the singing nuns. "I saw what grace looks like," she'd say. "I want to live a life that honors that." So, what does this story whisper to us now? What can it possibly teach us, living in this completely different world more than 2 centuries down the line? Well, first, maybe it teaches us what courage really is. We have this idea that courage is having no fear, that it's just raw, unfiltered boldness. But those 16 nuns were terrified. Sister Constance couldn't find sleep. Sister Marie Antoinette cried, whispering that she wasn't brave enough. They were just people with the same human fear of pain in the end that you and I have. But they discovered a courage born not from the absence of fear, but from the overwhelming presence of love, a fierce commitment to each other and to something so much bigger than themselves. Their story suggests that real courage isn't about being fearless at all. It's about choosing what truly matters, especially when your hands are shaking. Second, it pulls back the curtain on the raw power of community. The 16 nuns didn't walk toward that blade alone. They walked toward it together. They held each other up, they blessed one another, they sang with each other, and that, my friend, made all the difference. We're wired for connection, you and I. We were never meant to face life's shattering moments in solitude. The story of these women is a stark reminder of why we need our people, the ones who will stand with us, who will be our strength when we are weak, who will sing with us right into the heart of the darkness. In a world that screams at us to go it alone, to chase personal glory, and pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, this is a quiet, revolutionary truth, and it's one we desperately need to hear. Third, it shows us the stark and absolute limits of power. The revolutionary government, they had it all. Total control. They had the guillotine, the prisons, the soldiers, and the laws to back it all up. They had the power to kill the 16 nuns, and they used it. But what they couldn't do was force them to stop being who they were. They couldn't silence their song. And in a way that defies all logic, the nuns won, even as they lost everything. They held onto their integrity. They stayed human inside a machine designed to strip them of their humanity. They proved that some things are more powerful than brute force, that the human spirit can rise above any circumstance, that meaning and purpose and love can burn brightly even in the face of the ultimate violence. Every tyrannical system that has ever existed has had to learn this lesson the hard way. You can control a person's body, but you can never truly own their heart. Fourth, it redefines the very nature of sacrifice. These nuns weren't chasing martyrdom. They weren't fanatics looking for a glorious end. They would have given anything to live, to go back to their quiet lives of prayer and simple service. But when they were cornered, forced to choose between a life built on a lie they couldn't accept and a death that honored their truth, they chose death, and their sacrifice was anything but pointless. Whether you believe their prayers literally ended the terror or not, it's undeniable that their deaths echoed. They changed people. They ignited reflection and even repentance. They became a symbol of conscience, standing firm against crushing power. Their story tells us that true sacrifice isn't about wanting to die. It's about being willing to die for something more important than just staying alive. Fifth, it opens up a conversation about the dance between faith and doubt, between belief and fear. These women weren't saints made of stone who never wavered. They were believers who struggled, who were terrified, who had those dark nights of the soul where they questioned everything. But they chose to act on their faith times despite times their doubts, to live by their beliefs times in spite of times their fears. This is so important because it makes their story real. It brings it down to earth for ordinary people like us, who also wrestle with doubt and get knocked down by fear. You don't have to be a perfect saint to live a life of integrity. You don't need flawless faith to make faithful choices. You just have to keep choosing, day by day, moment by moment, to be true to what you know, deep down, matters most. Sixth, it reveals the quiet, earth-shaking power of a witness. The 16 nuns didn't write grand manifestos. They didn't lead armed rebellion. They didn't topple any governments. They simply lived and then died, according to their deepest convictions. And in doing so, they became a living testament to values that soar above politics: love, faith, community, integrity, grace. Their witness was so powerful precisely because it was so real, because it cost them absolutely everything, because you couldn't just brush it off as cheap talk or easy platitudes. When someone is willing to die for what they believe, you stop and you listen. You might not even agree with them, but you can't deny the sincerity, the commitment, the sheer depth of it. The witness of these nuns has echoed through 2 centuries, inspiring countless others to live with more integrity, to take their own beliefs more seriously, to ask themselves what they, too, would be willing to sacrifice for. And 7th, maybe the most important lesson of all, their story teaches us about the radical possibility of hope in a seemingly hopeless world. July 17th, 1794 was one of the bleakest moments in the history of France. Thousands were gone. The government was an engine of totalitarian terror. Fear was official state policy. Any logical person would have looked at the world and despaired, concluding that the darkness had won for good. But the 16 nuns did not despair. They sang. They chose to fill that suffocating darkness with music, to answer violence with grace, to meet death not just with dignity, but with a kind of joy. That choice, that defiant refusal to surrender to despair, even at the very end, is a form of hope itself. It's a declaration that meaning survives, that love endures, that the human spirit cannot, in the end, be broken. This isn't some wide-eyed optimism. The nuns knew they were walking to their deaths. They had no illusions of a last-minute rescue. But they chose hope anyway, not hope that their circumstances would change, but hope in something deeper, in truths that transcend circumstance, in a reality that even death cannot touch. The story of the 16 Carmelite nuns of Compiègne is not just some historical footnote. It's not just another sad story from a brutal time. It's a story that still breathes, that still speaks to us, because it touches on the fundamental questions of what it means to be human. How do we look suffering in the eye? How do we hold on to who we are when the world tries to break us? How do we show up for each other when the lights go out? What are we willing to give everything for? What, in the end, gives our short time here meaning? These questions have no expiration date, and the nun's story offers not simple answers, but profound ones. Answers written not in ink, but in action, not in theory, but in blood and in song. In our own time, the challenges we face look different. Most of us, at least in the developed world, aren't facing a literal blade for our beliefs. But we face other kinds of pressures, don't we? The pressure to conform, to compromise our values, to choose security over integrity. The pressure to stay quiet in the face of injustice, to put our own comfort ahead of our conscience. The nun's story holds up a mirror and challenges us to look at our own lives, our own choices. What are we willing to stand for? What are the lines that we will not allow ourselves to cross? When it all comes down to it, what truly matters most to us? These aren't easy questions, and the answers are different for every single one of us. But asking them is essential. So, here's what I want you to carry with you from this story. Remember, Sister Constance, just 29 years old, who could have run. In the absolute chaos of 1794, she could have just disappeared, changed her name, and started a new life. No one would have ever blamed her. But she chose to stay with her sisters, to face death rather than betray the person she was. Think of Julie Verlotte, 32, who wasn't even a sworn nun. She had every legal and moral right to just walk away, but she looked at the women who had become her family and said, "Where you go, I will go." And Mother Teresa, 42, who had to endure the agony of watching each of her spiritual daughters die before her own eyes, blessing each one, knowing they had only moments left, having to be the rock for everyone else, even as her own heart was breaking. She could have saved herself with a single word by taking the oath, by pretending to abandon her faith. But she chose integrity over survival. She chose to die as herself rather than live as a stranger. These were ordinary women, and that, right there, is what makes their story both so incredibly powerful and so deeply challenging. They weren't born as heroes. They were the daughters of farmers. They were widows. Some were young, some were old, some were educated, others were simple. They were people just like you and me, but they were people who made extraordinary choices. They showed us that ordinary people are capable of the most extraordinary courage, that normal human beings can be put to the ultimate test and not only endure, but transcend. They proved that grace and dignity and love are possible even in the deepest, darkest pit, and if they could do it, maybe we can too. Probably not by facing a guillotine, but by facing our own tests with that same integrity, by standing for what we believe even when it's hard, by loving each other through the tough times, and by singing our own songs into our own darkness. 230 years later, we still remember 16 women who chose to sing. Their song was cut short by the blade, but it still echoes, carried on the wind by everyone who hears their story and is changed by it, by everyone who chooses courage over fear, integrity over compromise, love over hate, and hope over despair. The guillotine is long gone, just scrap metal now. The Revolutionary Tribunal is a ghost. Robespierre is a name in a history book, but the song goes on. And maybe that's the final lesson, that love is in fact stronger than death. That meaning outlives circumstance, that the human spirit can never truly be conquered. 16 nuns died on a summer afternoon in 1794, but their song, their witness, their choice, their love, those things didn't die. Those things can never die. Those things echo still, calling out to our own courage, our own integrity, our own song. If this story reached you, if you believe that remembering these moments of profound human courage truly matters, drop a 1 in the comments below. And if you want me to keep sharing stories like this, stories that remind us of what we're capable of when we are at our very best, drop a 2. Because history isn't just about dates and battles and long-dead kings. It's about people. Ordinary people who in extraordinary moments showed us what courage really looks like, what faith really means, and what it truly costs to live a life of integrity. Thank you for listening. Remember their names, remember their song, and maybe ask yourself, what song is my life singing? What would I be willing to die for? And more importantly, what am I truly willing to live for? These are the questions that matter. These are the questions the 16 nuns of Compiègne, with their final breath, are still asking us today.